Last week, Julie Carroll posted a status that read, "Just had the most delicious banana ever." It got 2 likes and 4 comments. Well, Julie, Geico also wants to make a comment. What if we told you in as little as 15 minutes you could save hundreds of dollars on your car insurance by switching to Geico? With those hundreds of dollars, we bet you can find another banana equally, if not more delicious than the one you had last week. Hashtag go bananas, hashtag savings.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Put your name on it. Just put your name on it. That's all I say. Be a man or a woman. Put your name on it.
Well, I'd like to hear about it, potheads.
How the fuck you gonna know how to be great if you don't study greatness? Look at the game tape.
Donuts.
If you want to battle, it's either that you will or you won't.
You know, you're not a bad-looking man, Mr. Gals.
But you are, Blanche. You are in that chair.
There's something wrong with us. Something very, very wrong with us.
Hey, man.
Can you hear him? We're good? More Stories podcast, Graham Nash in my garage. You know, you've been in my ears for most of my my life. So the fact that you're sitting here in the flesh, not accompanied and not harmonizing with others, is this is quite unique to get Graham Nash solo.
Yeah, especially in the garage.
In the garage.
Yes,
it's been a long time. It's been like pre-Hollies since you've actually...
You didn't even show me to the main room there. Just straight to the garage.
That's not true. We hung out in the house, Graham Nash. Don't tell tales out of school. You're one of the very few podcast guests that actually go through the house. And
is that right? Why do they normally come in this way with the dogs?
That's it. Yeah. I say my house is your house from there over. From this side just to that guest bathroom. You and I actually sat in the kitchen, had some tea.
That's right. I'm
like
still
proper British gents.
Cheers.
Cheers, brother. You know, let's hear the clink in the mics. There you go, my man. All right. You're going back on tour. And this is exciting because it's you and Shane Fontaine. And if anybody wants to go see Graham Nash, which is everybody listening to the podcast, 1 million people every Monday, I'm going to guess about 700,000 of them are saying, yeah, let's go see Graham Nash. It's grahamnash.com/tour. Shane Fontaine, I asked you about this in the house, but I wanted to save it for air. You could have toured with anybody, including Crosby, including Steven, including Neil. Probably not. Neil's a guy you don't want to spend 3 months with when you're rounding.
I don't know about that.
No? It's in your book.
Yeah.
Why Shane Fontaine? I mean, literally, you could have picked Rufus Wainwright. You could have picked...
Because I don't have to think.
It's that simple.
I just tell him what key I'm playing in, and he goes.
That's it.
He's an amazing player. I mean, when Crosby and I didn't have when Dean Parks wanted to stay in town because he's first on the list of guitar players that are, wanted for studio sessions. When he was playing in our band, but when he couldn't do that because he didn't want to lose his place, Shane learned 30 songs in 2 days.
Just Crosby, Stills, and Nash songs?
No, just me and David songs. Oh. And then it branched out from there because we realized how valuable he is. Because I don't have to think. I just have to sing my songs the best way I can.
Well, I mean, that's the only way. You're kind of known for singing them the best way you can. I don't really, in recent memory, I've listened to a lot of live recordings. And, I don't think people realize we're going to get to Woodstock and Altamont and all that. But I think Woodstock was, your second gig with Crosby
yes.
With Stephen Stills and David Crosby?
And Neil. Yeah.
And we'll get to the shenanigans with the footage. Or no, let's talk about it now.
Well, the truth is nobody knew until after the gig that Neil didn't want to be...
Hold this closer to your mouth. This is too good.
He just didn't want to be photographed. He didn't want to be videoed or, filmed as it was then. And threatened to, be upset if anybody tried to film him. And so not a lot of people know that Neil was, in fact, at Woodstock with us.
Yeah, I didn't realize it till I read your book. And back when your book came out, Graham Nash, Wild Tales, It's really fantastic, and I put my name on that. That's a book every fan of rock and roll, and just growing up, it's a fantastic book. But in the book was the first time I had ever realized, because I always saw Crosby, Stills, and Nash. That's it. At Woodstock.
Yep. No, Neil was
Neil
there.
Young. But how does Neil behind the scenes negotiate? I mean, Woodstock.
Wait, Jay. He's Neil.
Yeah, but the listeners don't know what that means. They just
but
know he's
Neil
the cool
does.
guy that hangs out with Eddie Vedder.
Yeah.
Now he loves to be photographed all the time.
Well, yes.
Keep on rocking in the free world.
Of
Saturday
course.
Night Live.
But Neil's always been his own person, and he's always had his own agenda, and God bless him. The guy's a brilliant musician.
No doubt. And I'm a huge Neil Young fan. But after reading your book, Graham Nash, it seems like out of the entire dynamic of Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, Neil was the guy that seemed to be the biggest pain in the ass.
I wouldn't put it that way. He was the
Well,
guy
you
that
don't
was
have
most
to.
determined to follow his heart, to follow what we consider to be the muse, to follow it to the nth degree and to honor it. And he's always been incredibly dedicated to that. And you got to give it to the guy. I mean, he some of the decisions that he makes, can be seen as selfish. And some of the decisions he's made, it can be seen as total brilliance. And I'll take both.
Well, you wrote in your book, I'm not putting you on blast here. I mean, we all know everybody's friends and everything's copacetic with the whole crew. But when you guys were mixing Deja Vu, you had a sense that Neil was never all the way in the way you...
He's never been all the way in.
David and Stephen were. But if it's you, David and Stephen, and you guys are this beautiful trio, and you bring in a fourth, it must make you mad.
We'd been hanging out for months and months and months at that point. We were in love with each other. We were in love with the music that we were making.
Yeah.
We were in love in the fact that it was sunny every day and beautiful women wanted to give you joints all day. I mean, we were in love with life, and we had a partnership, that was based upon the music that we could make between David and Stephen and I. And we were partners for months before Neil came. And as you said, Neil was never all the way in. He's always been Neil Young and always will be.
How frustrating is that? I guess it's probably
It's not. I've learned to not be frustrated with it.
The end product is this beautiful music,
Right.
and you do a really great job in Wild Tales in the book explaining how what Neil brings out of David live is so completely worth every headache and bump in the road.
Yes, and what he brings out of Stephen. And what he brings out of me. In fact, what he brings out with everybody he plays with. He's serious as a heart attack about every single note. And if you're not serious the same way he is, get out of the way.
Yeah.
And that's Neil, and I love him.
And you wrote in the book that Neil would play a lick and look across the stage at Stephen and or Cross and be like, follow that motherfucker.
That's
and
right.
both guys would be like, oh, I'll follow that motherfucker.
Mainly Stephen, but yes.
Yeah.
I mean, David and I are good rhythm guitar players, but we're nowhere near the expertise of Stephen and Neil. When I used to stand in front of the audiences of, what was the average audience in '74? I don't know, 60,000 people, right? When I stood,
that's the average.
That was the average of that tour in '74.
This just boggles my mind.
Yeah, crazy times. But when I would stand on stage in between Neil and Stephen, conversing like that musically with their guitars, it was pretty special, and it happened night after night, of course.
It's got to be amazing, being an Englishman specifically, coming to the United States has got to be overwhelming. But in the book, you do a really great job explaining, like, you really were sort of just dropped into hippie utopia. Like,
Absolutely.
You didn't land in New Jersey or Ohio.
No.
Let's be fair.
I didn't hit you across the country.
No. You landed in Laurel Canyon.
And right
and it's
into the
just
middle of
chicks,
it.
joints, and David Crosby.
Yep.
This is what blew my mind. You come here with $0. You got a guitar. You got some stuff, some personal effects, and you let David Crosby know, I don't have any money. David Crosby says to you, hey, don't worry about bread, man. and he scratches you a check for $80,000.
That's right. That's correct.
How much fucking money did this guy make in the birds? I don't have $80,000 now. I'm on television.
I know, but you know, David's David, and he saved my ass. He really did. Because
and the check cleared.
The truth is, I had money. I was just feuding with the English government about double taxation. I didn't want them to tax me in England on my money and then tax me when I brought it to America. And so that was what was going on.
So don't spend any money.
It wasn't that I was this pauper. Come on.
Here's the publicist we like.
Hey, Ryan. How are you?
Brother man, I was just singing your praises to Graham.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I came a little early
have a
because
seat
I
in the
was
massage
paranoid
chair.
about traffic.
That's a weight bench. You'll get uncomfortable there. There's a massage chair over there, brother.
Cool. Thank you.
If you want anything to drink, it's in the. We're very low. None of this gets edited out, by the way.
I'm hoping.
That's why.
I'm hoping not. This is gold.
Soft drinks
this is
and water.
dynamite.
Soft drinks and water in that fridge. If you want booze, you're gonna have to go pick it up yourself.
So Crosby saved my ass. He really did. He lent me $80,000. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a lot of money now, but in like 65, like, I mean, did he just?
Wait, come on, we're not that old.
What?
This was 68.
All right, I'm off by 3 years.
Yeah,
like,
well,
I know and I also
years.
know how the record company works. So it wasn't like, let's say he has all the ASCAP money and all the publishing rights from the Birds, and he splits no money with any of the other guys. $80,000 in 68. That's like $400,000. Where the fuck did David Crosby get? Like, this fascinated me, Graham.
I know. Maybe I'll ask him. I'll just
must.
call him.
Where do you get? Did he have a wealthy family?
He had an affluent family. Don't forget, his father was a filmmaker and actually won an Oscar for a movie that he made in the late 20s, early 30s called Taboo, and also shot High Noon.
I didn't know that. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Graham Nash. Let's get these commercials in quick because I want to dive deep into the Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Young catalog, and we'll talk about where you place a proper ampersand when there's more than two guys in a band. Listen to this.
When shopping for car insurance, consider this. Geico has been saving people money on car insurance for over 75 years. So if you're serious about savings, it's simple. Go to geico.com. After 75 years, they know how to save you money.
Graham Nash, more stories. Listen, those commercials are fascinating. I know you enjoyed them.
They're necessary.
They are necessary.
Absolutely.
These mics don't pay for themselves, Graham Nash.
Right. And this electricity that's flying around.
When you first come to the United States, is it other British guys and Irishmen that I've interviewed? It's the first thing that comes to the consciousness of the guy landing in the United States is space. There's so much of it. Explain to me and explain to the listener, being not from this country, what people should appreciate about this country when you come over from England.
I brought my mother over from Manchester. I flew her to New York. She wasn't a great flyer in those days. She was pretty nervous about it. But I knew that there was, the fastest way to get her there would be to go from Manchester to New York. But from New York, I put her on a train. And when I picked her up in, I think it was Oakland in California, I lived in San Francisco at the time. I said, "How are you doing, Mother?" And she said, I'm doing fine, but I've been on this train for 3 days. There's no train journey in all of England that would take more than, 10 hours.
You can go to Monaco.
You just fall off the end, So that gives you an idea of the appreciation that people that live on a tiny island, which England is, have when they come to America and they're on a train for 3 days.
Just rolling. Yeah. I've been on the train, and it's just like, and I've driven myself across the country, and I remember.
I'd like to do that.
Well, I can't recommend it enough, and you can't have my wife. But she's my best traveling partner. But,
Fantastic.
July, I was at the baseball All-Star game in St. Louis, and we went, hey, let's fuck off. Let's get out of here. And we rented a truck and just drove across, like, Kansas, all through the Colorado Rockies. And it's like, everybody you speak to in this country, when they get to a certain age, they go, I wish when I was younger and had more time, I had driven across country.
You can make time.
And I realized I have plenty of time.
Yeah, plenty of time.
I'm a comic. I have to be there anyway.
That's funny.
I'll take a day off of work. I'll drive.
Right.
And then the weekend comes and you do it. It's great.
Tell more jokes and buy more gas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of gas. Your dad was a musician.
No.
No?
Not at all.
I see lots of photos of your dad singing.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm sure behind 3 or 4 pints, anyone will get up singing.
But I see a big microphone. I'll show you the photo in the book.
That was the first karaoke shot. 1954.
Oddly, he was doing Hall & Oates, Private Eyes. Somehow it was available even back then. I was under the impression that your dad was in the music, was he just a showman?
He was a bit of a showman, I must admit.
Did that rub off on you? Did you see your dad?
Sure. I'm sure it must have. Because
he never met a stranger, this guy.
Well, the truth is that we're all products of how we were brought up.
Yeah. You either run towards it or you run away from it.
I've always run towards it.
That's beautiful. Well, then you got nothing to worry about.
But don't forget that when you're running towards something, you're running away from something.
Yeah, you're running away from
whatever it is.
Right. Laurel Canyon, I lived in for a while. But I lived in it in like 93, 94. Graham. So
missed it by 25 years.
We just like ships in the night.
If you'd have made a left on Lookout Mountain,
it's good. Good schools on Lookout Mountain.
Yeah,
really good schools up there.
Yeah, we used to play basketball in that schoolyard.
Who out of Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young? Who's the best basketball player?
Oh, Stephen, without doubt.
He's really?
Well, the truth is, he's incredibly competitive. And I never was. I didn't give a shit. I mean, I was used to playing cricket where you put pads on everywhere, and, it's like, no padding, no thanks.
Just jump shots?
Nah. And so Stephen was probably the best player because he was competitive.
More competitive than Neil? Whoa,
no,
long beat
yes,
there,
long
brother.
beat there. No, not more competitive than Neil, just competitive in a different way.
I think if Neil was playing basketball, this is my opinion, not Graham Nash's for the listener. I think Neil, while playing basketball, the vibe I get is Neil would be playing basketball saying, 5 years from now, how will this benefit me, Neil?
That's right, and call for Elliott for a second ball.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's pretty fair.
Well, you say in the book, Neil uses. I feel like I'm piling on Neil, and I don't mean to because I'm madly in love with Neil.
There's a lot to pile on.
Okay, well then
about all of us.
All right, but sure,
you can talk about any of us, and we can always manufacture some scandal somewhere.
But you seem kind of scandal free.
Ah, well, good.
Out of the group, you don't agree with that? Comparatively,
well,
I would say you're least scandal, then Stephen, then. Go ahead.
There was a time when I got heavily into drugs because of me dealing with David's journey on his drug path. I tried not taking any drugs. I tried taking more than David. I tried everything, and until I realized that only David could really save himself, which he did when he walked into, the FBI in Miami.
Excuse me?
When he walked into the FBI in Miami and gave himself up.
For? You have the floor, Graham.
Well, there was a warrant out for his arrest, for the drugs and gun thing in Dallas, in Texas. I mean, it's well documented.
He's really just a portlier Keith Richards when it comes to the pirate aspect.
I think Crosby has his own blood.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I think Keith has, parts of everyone on the planet's blood.
Yeah, Keith's held together with baling wire and duct tape, and he's filled with straw.
But what a great soul he is.
He's incredible.
I love him.
Keith Richards, Ron Wood. Very interesting dynamic to me as a fan of music, because it's almost like Ron Wood was born and it was a slow march through the faces to just sort of become a Rolling Stone. But it took Brian Jones. Somehow Mick Taylor inexplicably quits at 22 years old.
And Bill quit, of course, Bill Wyman, because he couldn't fly anymore.
But then when you see Ronnie Wood and Keith playing together, it's sort of like that Neil Young, Stephen Stills battle.
Yeah, and there's a mirror between them.
Without the animosity, though.
Yeah. The truth is, I don't think there was ever any animosity between Neil and Stephen, except when it got a little dicey when he was leaving the Springfield and stuff and leaving them in the lurch occasionally. But I think they've got a great love for each other. I really do. Yeah,
it's that one thing about... I think it was Paul McCartney was at. They kept peppering Paul McCartney about questions about John and, did Yoko break up the Beatles and all this stuff. And they just kept, it was some interview I saw where they just kept pounding him and pouting him. And they gave him every option available to just kind of throw his guys under the bus. And then Paul just, as only Paul could say, said, he's me mate.
Yeah.
And that was it.
That's it.
No other questions after that.
Right.
He's my mate.
He's my mate, yeah.
That's my guy. I don't know what to tell you. You guys went to Woodstock, second gig ever. By the way, congratulations on pulling that off. I would love to have had your booking agent when I was starting out in stand-up comedy to perform someplace in front of
it was
people.
insane. I know, with occasionally with one acoustic guitar.
But to do well in front of 5, the monitors on stage sucked. You couldn't hear yourselves. You said the crowd, and you're the first guy that I read that wrote very specifically and succinctly and perfectly that the actual crowd made a sound of an engine coming toward you because it was a living, breathing entity.
Right, you get several 100,000 kids together, and that's what happens. There's an incredible energy, and it was insane. And to be able to perform Guinevere or Sweet Judy Blue Eyes with one acoustic guitar, in front of all those people was insane. But I must tell you that there was no fear. We knew what we had.
Well, David said he was shitting his pants. And
actually, that was Stephen.
Oh, excuse me. Stephen said he was shitting his pants, and you made it real clear in the book.
Well, it didn't. Let's get it right.
Wild
I mean, come on. He said we were scared shitless. That's a little different than shitting your pants. Okay.
Well, he said it on stage.
Yes, he did.
All right. I misquoted Stephen. We're scared shitless.
And the fact is, I wasn't.
Yeah. You made that clear in the book. Like, hey, man, I play.
Yeah. Let's go. We have great music. These kids are going to love us. Let's rock.
But how do you know that your second live gig?
Because we had thrilled each other.
See, that shows how much you respect the Byrds, how much you respect Springfield, and how much you loved each other. And the Hollies, obviously. Sure. That if I can make David happy, if I can make Stephen happy, and Crosby, and you guys all feeling that in that little triangle, man, 500,000 people were going to blow their minds. With acoustics.
Yes. You
filled the room somehow. The room being a farm that you have the helicopter into, which I would like to explain, Graham Nash. You almost didn't make it to Woodstock.
Yes, kind of. I mean, who knows what may have happened. But what did happen was that, about, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 feet from landing, the back tail rotor on the helicopter stopped for some reason. And of course, so now the loss of that stabilization means that the body of the helicopter is going to spin in opposition to the rotary of the wings. And so he had to throw it down, and it was a pretty heavy landing, but we landed and everything was fine. But God knows what
could have been 130 feet, and then you could have taken out like 2,000 hippies.
I know, but it didn't, and so hey, and Sebastian met us with a pocket full of joints, and the rest is history.
John Sebastian fascinates me. He's it's safe to say he's a dear friend of yours.
Yes,
and a musician that sort of I don't think gets spoken about enough. You always hear about like Donovan and Joan Baez and all the people that were there, and all the bands that were always in the mix, and it always seems like John Sebastian sort of gets glossed over. Do you get that impression?
I think that's true, and it's not right either. He's a tremendous songwriter, and he wrote most of the hits that the Spoonful had. Underestimated, but he's a gentleman, and he's I think he's very grateful that he had a musician father who played classical harmonica in orchestras, by the way. So he came from a kind of a musical family. And I think he's grateful having been there at pivotal points in this, what is, being laughingly referred to as the 60s.
What's amazing to me is I think John Sebastian's only #1 hit is the theme song to Welcome Back, Kotter.
Ah, yes. Well,
Welcome back.
American media, yes, great.
Like, this guy has this whole catalog with Love Spoonful and Welcome Back, Kotter. Yeah. That's his big breakthrough hit. People go, oh, that's the guy that wrote the Welcome Back, Kotter theme.
Well, I'm sure he made a slight fortune off.
You're dealing with a network. You never know.
Nah, that's true, too.
Now you got your hands in 2 cookie jars. You got the guy. Did you guys have a favorable deal? The first Crosby, Stills, and Nash album was such a success, and then obviously Deja Vu is just changes music. Were you guys able to get publishing early enough where, because you hear so many cautionary tales, guys, in the 60s, early 70s, you know, the Stones had to create like a fake Nanker Phelps, had to create like this fake guy.
There's a story about it in Wild Tales, as a matter of fact. And it was that, you know, originally the Hollies publishing was signed to Dick James, who were Elton John and the Beatles, you know. And the deal in England at that point was 50-50. And there was no negotiations. That was it. That was the standard publishing deal for people that
the record company gets 50?
No, the publisher gets 50 and the artist gets 50.
Okay.
Now, when you're not selling anything, of course, that's a great deal. You're getting, you know, 50% of something, right? But when you start being the Beatles, you know, and you're selling millions and millions of pieces of plastic,
right.
You know, all of a sudden that 50% becomes ginormous.
And you're splitting that with John and sometimes Ringo and George.
When we first signed with Dick James, he said, you know, and if you have any trouble, just come and see me. We'll work it out. Right? So, you know, 4 or 5 years later, when I realized that I'm coming to America and I need to take everything with me that I own, I went to Dick and I said, you remember you told me all those years ago that if I ever had a problem, I'd just come and talk to you? And he went, yeah. I said, well, I'm talking to you now. I'm leaving the Hollies. I'm going with this man called David Crosby and this man called Stephen Stills. And I'd like my publishing back. And he picked up the phone and he called his secretary and he said, bring in Graham's publishing agreement. And we waited about 4 or 5 minutes, and she came in, and he took it from her and put it in front of my face and ripped it up, and gave me my publishing back.
All of it.
All of it.
You have 100% of your publishing from the Hollies.
And I've kept it ever since.
So if like Motel 6, not a sponsor, just picking it out of thin air, uses a Holly song for a commercial, they have to call Graham Nash and say, what's your price?
Yes, they do.
That's amazing.
It is.
How does it work? Let me ask you this. I'm sure you know much more because I've seen a lot of Crosby, Stills, and Nash songs on commercials on television. Sometimes I hear like the song from the artist sung by somebody else.
Right.
Does that just mean you pay less money for the commercial?
Yes, absolutely.
Really?
Yeah, because
but do you still have to okay
the deal. That is an archaic deal. If I license our house for $1 million, I have to pay Atlantic $500,000.
Under the old deal?
Under the old deal.
Okay.
If I re-record our house so that you don't know that you're not listening to the actual record that I made of it in 1969, they don't get any.
Okay. Well, what if, you know, Shane Fontaine does... What if I'm listening to Our House, but it's Shane Fontaine covering Our House?
Yes.
For whatever product to be named.
You only pay me. I don't have to pay Atlantic anything.
But what do you have to pay Shane? Shane got
whatever
to get
deal
something.
I have with Shane.
So it all goes through you.
Of course.
So you can say like, well, you know. But,
well, yeah,
but hold on. But wouldn't the commercial entity, wouldn't the company pay Shane? And then you get a royalty from what Shane is making? You really okay.
Yeah. He would if Shane as an artist recorded one of my songs, he would get paid by his record company and get paid. But I would get the publishing because Shane didn't write it, I did.
And is it different each? This is fascinating to me. So is it different for each commercial, for each corporate entity?
Absolutely.
And you can name your price.
Pretty much so right now, yes. Especially with Our House or Teach Your Children. Yes.
Yeah. And you just got to name a price up until the point where they're willing to walk away, and then you go, no, that's where it is. I think it was Bowie was the first guy to make his catalog public. He was like a billionaire.
He did. He went public with his catalog. I wonder how that deal worked out. By the way,
I'd like to know. He was a billionaire in '98, so I'm assuming now he's got a few more shekels.
Right. But there's a great interest in and money to be made in publishing. You know. As again, the 60s era music, you know, because it seems to have spun generations and now it's getting incredibly popular again. We just did, 30 shows. Every single night was packed. Every single night. And I'm talking about I only stopped touring 5 days ago.
Oh, really?
Right? I mean, so that was
you're going back out.
End of the tour. Sure.
GrahamNash.com/tour.
Yeah. I love to make music. I like to communicate. You know?
I know why it's packed, Graham, and that's because there is no new music. There's no new angst. And other musicians I've had on this podcast, punk guys from Guns N' Roses, Jane's Addiction, Bad Brains, Black Crowes, Bootsy Collins. I ask all these guys, where's the new music? Where's the Yanks? And it's a common thread with musicians my age and older is we don't know. And we don't understand why nobody's pissed off anymore. And
People are pissed off, Jay.
But it's not coming out in the music.
That's
and they're letting the
because
corporate
we've been trained to not want it to come out there. Do you think the people that own the world's media, that you can count probably on two hands, want protest music on their radio?
No,
not
of course
at all.
not. But
don't they want sheep?
Yeah.
Don't they want them to just lie down and get robbed?
Yeah, but every once in a while, yes. The answer is an emphatic yes.
Now then, on the other hand of that, you go to Neil Young's website, Living with War, and you can find 3,000 protest songs on that website. They just don't want them on their airwaves.
But you don't need the songs on the airwaves.
No, but you do need the songs
seats.
to make it visible so that you don't have to say no one cares anymore. They do care. You're not listening.
No, I
because,
am. I'm
no,
seeking.
No.
Oh,
because
okay.
they're not feeding it.
I was like,
to
how
you.
dare you?
No. I didn't mean you weren't listening. I mean you weren't listening because it's not there to listen to.
Right. And if I go to Neil Young's website, I would obviously find them. It just doesn't dawn on me to go on Neil Young's website because I have decades.
Because it used to be on the Ohio used to be broadcast as you were gardening.
And I don't think people, maybe they don't, and maybe this is a real sharp audience that you're talking to. Like you mentioned Ohio, 4 Dead in Ohio. I mean, all hell was breaking loose. Mm-hmm. There seems to be this bucolic, Pollyannish view of the 60s of, free love, hippies, smoking dope.
It was all that.
Yeah, but Vietnam, nuclear threat at all times.
Right.
It seemed like it was a goddamn panic. It was a panic-stricken decade.
Yeah, it was. I am actually preparing documents for an exhibit at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame of me. And I was today, and I came across my letter that Richard Nixon wrote to Henry Kissinger, giving up the presidency, resigning the presidency of the United States. And I was looking at it today and realizing, yes, the 60s was bucolic. It was dope. It was sunshine. It was free love. But it was also incredibly, incredibly chaotic. The Vietnam War was going on. Civil rights were going on. Colored people were getting strong. The women's movement, all the students were on fire throughout the world about, stuff that they didn't agree with. So it was pretty chaotic at the same time as being bucolic.
Do you think there's a yin and yang to that? Like you can't have light without the darkness. You can't have the darkness. Like you wouldn't have had that bucolic, beauty, hippie, laid back, lazy summer days, rolling and smoking joints by the pool if there wasn't the threat of getting drafted at any moment.
And that's right, and getting blown away the moment you landed. Yes.
Yeah, one feeds the other.
Yep. Sure
so
does.
Maybe what we need to get the music up and running again is no, I'm not even going to suggest the impossible and the unbearable and the unthinkable. What I loved about your Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction was James Taylor's induction speech. One thing about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame I love is, first of all, there's people in there that have no business being in there, and there's people that are overlooked for so long. For example, the Hollies getting in
25 years later.
But how many years after Crosby, Stills, and Nash? 25 years after Crosby, Stills, and Nash, the Hollies get in. It's like, hello. It's kind of precursor. Anywho, I'm always also fascinated by people's, whoever is chosen to, do you choose who does your induction speech?
They gave us a list.
Okay. So James Taylor does the speech.
Right.
James Taylor, to me, perfect.
Good word.
He's perfect.
Good word.
And people don't realize he was a down, dirt under the nails, full-blown heroin addict, junkie, singing steamroller. The guy you see now that looks like he could be president of the United States. There was a time when he could rock your fucking balls off.
Absolutely. And can still.
Yes,
no matter what he looks like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So perfect. And perfect. I want to know who else is on that list. And I don't want you to say anything bad about anybody.
You know what? I'm not even sure I know.
You're full of shit.
It probably,
there's no way you don't. Because there had to be.
I know it included Jackson, it included Bonnie, maybe Joni if she would come out of her cave.
Was she on the list?
She may have been. I mean, because
but that would have been a little weird because you and Joni were an item. So now all of a sudden you're a little more under the spotlight compared to David.
Well,
and
no, Joni would have done it.
It seems in your book, it seems like Joni Mitchell, aside from being an astounding songwriter, singer, performer, and a person that sort of her tuning fork seemed to be set to comfort. I think that's a fair. That's what I got from it. Like,
interesting.
With you, well, I mean, you went into her house for the first time and went.
Well, the truth is, I was very comfortable with Joan. We were very comfortable with each other.
Yeah, but very great at micromanaging after the breakup.
Yeah,
of you
because
and Joni.
Because life happens, and you can't. You must get on with it. I think a lot of that comes from my upbringing in England, during the end of World War II, when you really didn't know whether your house was going to be there tomorrow, or your friends, if they would be alive tomorrow. I mean, literally, seriously, right? So when you grow up and you survive that, you come out with an attitude of, hey, what's the job we're doing? Oh, is that what we're doing? Great. Let's do it the best we can and have the most fun. Fantastic. Let's go. And that's been my attitude all along. All this fighting, all this infighting, backstabbing shit, it's all meaningless to me. The only important thing is the music that we make. It's the only thing that's going to last. This body's rotting as we speak.
Yeah, we were born dying.
That's right.
Slowly, and it gets accelerated on the back end.
Yes, it certainly does.
But it seems like with Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and then when Neil joins, it's Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, and now it's Young. It seems like no matter what was happening personally between you guys, you were one of the very few bands where it was no matter what's happening, music. What's the music? What's the music? You guys could be in a full-out, drag-down, knock-down fight, and then Steven would say, I got track 1 of Deja Vu. I found it. And he would sit down and play it for you,
and break your heart.
And everything evaporates.
Yep, that's
because of the music.
And it's happened many, many, many times.
Yeah. But do you know now, in 2014, that was a one-off? Like you're like there's maybe 3 bands ever where that was the case?
I think when it took me, over 4 years to put together the CSNY 1974 Stadium Tour box set that came out about a year ago, I began to realize just, how incredibly individual those 4 guys were. And it was a little difficult for me because I was one of those 4 guys. I was the producer of the album with Joel Bernstein, but I had to separate myself as producer from being one of the guys I was producing. My point is that I began to realize that each of those guys is spectacularly talented in their own way. Unbelievably so. I mean, the musicianship of David Crosby and Stephen Stills and Neil Young is stupendous. And we've always been as real as we can be, given the fact that we're in showbiz.
Yeah, I think you sell yourself short a lot too, Graham. In the book, you talk about when you're remastering these things, and like something like Stephen really jumps out at you, of just playing differently, and David tuned to a different frequency, and like singing in a different
But look what
register.
happens when it all comes together.
Yeah.
And that was one of the most difficult things in doing the box set.
What was that?
One of the most difficult things in putting the box set together was to take 10 shows that were recorded in different sonic environments, like someone's garage. Every stadium was different.
You guys can play here whenever you want. Open invite.
Great, I'm down. The shape of every hall was different, and so sonically they're all different. But my job was to put you in the front, 10 rows back in the middle, and make you think you're listening to one show at one place.
Yeah.
That was the most difficult sonic thing that I had to deal with.
When you play Woodstock, circling back around, sonically, it's open air, and it goes on essentially. No, literally, it went on forever.
For miles, yeah.
How do you know at the time if you can't hear yourself on stage? And I know David Crosby was tuning on the fly pretty much the entire set. How do you know at that time, in your own mind, we're killing this? This is the best.
When we're on it?
Yeah, because you can't hear yourself in the monitors.
I know, but we're good.
I know you're good, but you see your mate, you see David Crosby tuning.
Yeah, but you'll notice on the footage of Woodstock that there isn't 3 feet between us.
Yeah, of course. You guys are huddled around. And you're sharing a mic with...
I share a mic with David. I'm probably 16 inches away from the microphone, and he's about maybe
Razor Throat.
6.
What was your nickname? Razor Throat?
Razor Throat, yeah.
That was you?
Yeah, that's me.
So you just know... You don't... Are you telling me, Graham Nash, that you don't need monitors in front of 500,000 people, admittedly coked and stoned out of your collective heads? Because everybody was. It's not a thing of singular, just Crosby, Stills, and Nash. That you know, just standing in that circle with your mates,
that we're killing it.
You know it.
Yeah, because we're killing each other.
But you can't hear it.
I know, but I listen.
It's a sixth sense. We're going into sixth sense territory.
I'm an empath. I feel what everyone's feeling.
Okay.
Sometimes before they're feeling it.
Yeah.
My body language, their body language. We are partners, and we spent months making this incredible vocal harmony record, and we know what we do. And I don't want to sound big-headed about it.
No,
but we're damn good at what we do.
Nobody thinks you're big-headed. It's Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and you've earned every right to be big-headed. But we're talking about Woodstock and your second live performance ever. Yep. And I think it's refreshing to the listener to hear a guy say, because I'm an empath and I vibe these guys out and I know it's clicking. And I think a lot of musicians don't have that sixth sense.
It's true, but don't forget, there's 3 of us. And each of us at Woodstock, you can tell by the way we're looking at each other, are digging each other and knowing that we're pulling this off.
Yeah.
Because it was the second time we've ever played in front of anyone on that scale. Wow. I mean, more than a room full of people when you're just figured out.
You played a ton with the Hall. Individually, you all played a lot.
No, that's true. But I'm talking about
when
when Crosby, Stills, and Nash, we could sing that entire first album with a couple of acoustic guitars and did many times in people's living room. But then when we got to Woodstock, now we're talking about a paid audience, right? It happened to be a lot of people, but wow, yeah, second gig, and we were good.
You were damn good.
Yeah.
But I'm fascinated, and I got to circle back around to Neil Young, unbeknownst to Stephen Stills. And again, I'll state for emphasis, I'm an enormous Neil Young fan. Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, and Neil Young over here. I love Crazy Horse, Cortez the Killer.
Right.
The longer the intro with that guitar, the better.
Yeah.
I am all in on Neil Young, so I'm certainly not saying, like, hey, what the fuck's with Neil Young? That's not where I'm coming from. But it's fascinating, and it must have been fascinating to you, and you must have been agog when you find out that they're filming Woodstock, and then you find out after the fact that Neil... Hold on, let me let this go by. That's one thing I do have to pause for. It's like we're filming a movie. Chopper. Yeah. Hold on.
I know.
Soundstage. They make a Woodstock movie. Everybody sees Crosby, Stills, and Nash. You said this earlier in the podcast at Woodstock, and you just said you guys are standing so close together that Neil Young negotiates separately that they can't use any of his songs in the film Woodstock, and his likeness cannot be used.
Correct.
Who does he negotiate that with? And how do you keep that
under... He tells Elliot.
But how do you keep that under your hat?
You have an agenda.
How does Elliot not go, hey, bro? How does Ahmet Erdogan not come to you?
Elliot's a smart man. I'm sure he had an argument with Neil, But, when Neil Young has made up his mind, you better get out of the way.
If you had gotten wind that that's what was going down at the time, once you realized the magnitude, you almost died in that damn helicopter crash, and there's literally 500,000 people. Here we go. Would that have affected the performance of Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Young? No, you know.
I don't, because it didn't happen, did it?
Yeah, but if you knew, I'm prying now.
I'm sure that
I'm being a nosy Parker.
I'm sure there would have been arguments, and I'm sure that we would have come up with some solution, because we always did. No matter what we faced, we always figured out a way to come through it, and that's been a lot of my job in this band, is to try and figure out a way through this fucking minefield.
In the book Wild Tales by Graham Nash, which I cannot emphasize enough that you guys need to read this. It seems like you were, whether you signed up for it or not, you seem to be the peacemaker. You seem to be exceptional at reading energy, vibing people out. And is that a job in a band that you want, or is that a job?
It is if you want the music. see that we made a big mistake. And the mistake was we showed each other how great we could be. Now I want it every time. I don't want it just in isolated periods. I want, if we can be that great, why can't we be that great all the time?
So you know when somebody's got something going on at home and they're dogging it.
Yep.
You know, good take, but I've seen you at 10. That was
That's
a 7.
right. And we're brutal with each other, especially when making records. Absolutely.
But it also, being the peacemaker, doesn't that take 10 years off your life, just with the aggravation, going back and forth from camp to camp?
It's taken 10 years off my life since 1945, so I'm actually at just under 1,000 years old. Right?
You're looking good.
I feel good.
You look pretty good. Altamont, which I was stunned. I had forgotten you guys were on the bill at Altamont, which is probably maybe the worst ideas in live music history to begin with. Like, hey, we'll get a speedway. We'll get the Hells Angels liquored up and tripping balls off on mescaline. They'll do security. Guy from Jefferson Airplane gets his face hit with a pool cue, gets punched in the face. And how scary. I don't know. Okay. You are sort of a conduit now to my listeners, because there's a lot of younger listeners that don't realize how many fascinating things happen. They go to Staples Center. They see you two. Everything's fine. They go home. You, Graham Nash, you performed in 2 separate decades, 3 really, where there was actual danger at all times. You
Especially
were
at Altamont. It was a very strange feeling day period. The interval music was, if I remember correctly, was kind of electronic and loud and irritating, and there was always this tension because, as you know, the Hells Angels were doing security and they were, not doing a very good job. It was a very tense day, and we are so glad that not a lot of people know that we played in Altamont. We left that to Mick and the boys. We got out of there immediately. We came off stage because we had a gig that night in Pauley Pavilion in UCLA in Los Angeles.
Oh, that's right. You flew. You took a helicopter again.
That's right. It came down.
And in the. Is it in Wild Tales? You say you guys actually ran to the helicopter from the stage?
Absolutely.
You ran?
Absolutely. I'm telling
Let's get the fuck out of here.
I'm telling you, it was a very weird feeling.
But I don't think anybody going to concerts today... Like, I've seen Give Me Shelter, and I've seen so much footage of Altamont just being an audiophile and wanting to know what was going down before I was born or shortly after I was born, that, like, I can say to my friends that are other, like, comics and musicians, like, hey, kind of an Altamont-y vibe going on here. Like, this is weird. Like, just doing stand-up. You'll walk into a place and go, Altamont here. Like, and everybody kind of picks up on it. But I don't think people realize there was an actual Altamont. And the moment you set foot on, was Speedway? What Speedway was it?
Yeah, good question.
Okay. It was a Speedway in Northern California,
right,
a racetrack.
Right.
And when you got there, this is really weird, Graham, that just showing up and getting out of the limousine or getting out of the car, upon putting your foot on pavement, you say, this isn't right.
No, that's right.
I don't think people listening get that vibe very often.
No, nobody. Everybody thought it wasn't right at Altamont. It was fucked from the very beginning.
But do you know how many evil forces have to be working simultaneously in different directions for you and every single other, like Jefferson Airplane, everybody
to get out of there?
Keith stops the show and goes, "That cat right there, man, that cat." And that wasn't even the fucking guy that wound up trying to take a shot at Mick.
Right.
Or a knife at Mick.
Knife, yeah. And the kid didn't threaten anybody. You can't threaten anybody on stage from 30 rows back.
He gave it a shot. It's on film. You see the flash of the blade.
Yeah,
but you got Hell's Angels on mescaline.
He was a long way away.
But you know what he had working against him? Hell's Angels were high, and he was black.
Yep.
That was a free pass to let the thumping...
Afraid so.
Yeah.
So we got out of Altamont as fast as we could.
Now, when you go to Pauley Pavilion, UCLA, right down the street, I mean, you want to talk about bucolic. Do you guys hit the stage rattled from, like, what was that?
We were so rattled that actually that was the night that Stephen collapsed, actually, right before the show. And we didn't actually know whether we were going to have to play that show. But he
Before Pauley?
before Paulie Pavilion. It was so stressful coming down what we'd been through at Altamont and the journey coming down and getting out of there.
But tell me what that was, Graham.
Because it was the thrill of having escaped something pretty evil.
But how do you know how evil? You weren't there when all the shit went down, but you can just tell being on stage. Wow, you really do.
Absolutely.
You read
Anybody
crowds.
could. You'd have to be an idiot not to know that it was fucked.
It's bad news.
Absolutely.
I mean, we all go to parties and go, this is kind of weird. Let's get out of here.
Exactly.
But you're talking about 80,000 people where a guy actually...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
So
anyway.
you go to Paulie Pavilion and Stephen he
collapsed.
He collapsed just because of the stress of what went down in Altamont.
I'm sure. And we were all coked up, you know.
Yeah. I'm sure that aided...
I'm sure it did.
In the freak out.
Yeah.
Where were you when you found out a guy actually died at Altamont?
A little later that night, maybe the 11 o'clock news or something.
And is it one of those things where you go, we knew it?
It wasn't a question of saying we knew it. It was a question of, go figure.
Yeah. And just for the listener, and we're backtracking a little bit, and forgive me, this isn't like the Who, I think it was in Cincinnati, where people are super excited, so they just rush the stage, and happens a lot, people get trampled because of joy and exuberance. This was you get out of the car, it's a bad vibe, and then after you leave, you're in UCLA, you find out a guy actually got beaten to death. All right.
And, so I'm glad that not a lot of people know that we were there.
Really?
I am.
It's not a notch in your belt that you get. Maybe you want people to know that you got out of there. That you were smart enough to beat it.
It's pretty obvious that we got out of there.
Yeah. I mean, the Stones had to close the show.
I know. God bless them.
It's one of the worst gigs in the world, having to close. You get famous enough, they want you to close.
Absolutely. It's the worst gig.
Whenever there's other comics on the show, I always offer, you like this, I always go, hey, you know what? I'll go on first.
Right.
I just say, and they go, really? Because to them, it's like a hierarchy. Like the weak guy goes on first, and I'm throwing myself into the weak category.
So you can get out of there.
But at the same time, I'm like,
basketball game. Right?
Yeah, and at the same time, I'm like, follow that, asshole.
Right, exactly.
I'm on my drive home while you're eating it 20 minutes into your set. Going back to your rock and roll induction with Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and Young, James Taylor, Joni was on the list, and so you get a list of people who they say the rock and roll in Cleveland, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They go, hey, here's a group of people we think might be good to introduce you. So you said you don't remember, but we do know Joni was on the list.
I'm sure.
You're sure or you're not sure?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but why wouldn't you ask Joni Mitchell to induct us into it? Why wouldn't you invite Bonnie? Why wouldn't you invite Jackson? Why wouldn't you invite James? Of course.
And then James Taylor, as we've both agreed, perfect.
Yeah, because James
in every
is pretty
sense
perfect.
Huh?
James is pretty perfect. He's a great musician.
Yeah.
And a fine person.
And lyricist, just
for days.
Yeah. He said something in your Hall of Fame speech. I always thought of them as having invented themselves. Do you remember him saying that at all?
Yes, I do.
Now, that really hit me in the gut because
we kind of did because, even though there's been harmony for centuries, whatever physical is going on with the vibrations that me and David and Stephen's voice create when we're blending our voices together in the air around a microphone. I don't think anything like that had ever been heard before.
Well, no.
That sound.
Of course.
Of course, the notes, of course. Any decent band can sing in three-part, but the sound that we created was incredibly unique, I thought.
Well, I thought, yes. And essentially what James Taylor is saying is you have no predecessor and you have no influence. Like everybody, like the Stones.
But that's not true, is it?
No, I'm not saying it's not true. Right. But to James Taylor, who we've agreed on the word perfect through this beautiful confluence of events that brought you into my garage in the Pacific Palisades, California.
Right.
I always thought of them as having invented themselves.
That's great. And you know what? Jimi Hendrix described us brilliantly. He said it's Western sky music.
And it is. Did you agree with that when he said it?
I did. I thought it was a perfect way of describing us.
Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and Young. Well, Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. Do you think... Is there a part of you that thinks we could have just kept cooking along?
I wrote "Wasted on the Way."
Oh, really? So you could have kept cooking along as CSN.
No matter how much fine music we have made, we could have made more. Egos, drugs, women, all got in the way.
So you're saying there's like 2 Crosby, Stills, and Nash albums that got left on the shelf?
Absolutely. More than that.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
But why don't you just record them? David's
it's very difficult. I mean,
No, it's not. Who the fuck am I?
Difficult.
You're in my garage. Who am I?
I know, but it's tough. You
I didn't
try
tour
dealing
with you.
With David and Steven and come back with me
okay,
tomorrow.
give me their numbers. I'll text them tonight.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you'll love
Stop
this.
goofing off, assholes. Let's get this together. Hey, Steven, I met your son once. Seems nice. Yeah. Hey, have you talked to Graham? Yeah. It's easy.
No, it's not.
It's not easy.
No, it's not.
Even Daltrey can get back together with Townsend, and even Robert Plant and Jimmy Page can be seated together.
And we're not apart. It's not like we're apart and we'd have to come together to record. It's just very difficult,
What's the difficult part? And I'm being serious.
The rate of people writing songs, because I'm the Democratic one. I want, 4 of Stevens, 4 of mine, and 4 of David's if we're going to do a CSN record, because normally there's usually 12 on, 12.
You keep leaving Neil Young out. I don't know if you realize you've been doing that.
I think it's self-protection. I love the music that Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young make.
Well, I'll
make it forever.
We all love it.
But we have to deal with Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. And Crosby put it best. It's like juggling 4 bottles of nitroglycerin. Everything's fine until you drop one.
Yeah. You said in the book, fantastically, you have I think it was on Bleecker Street. It was a diner on Bleecker Street, thereabouts. Everybody, was it Altamont Erdogan that said you guys need Neil Young?
Uh-huh.
Okay. I'm with you when I'm reading the book. If you go linearly, chronologically through the book, you go, Crosby, Stills, and Nash. This album is ridiculous. 4 million copies now. I don't know how much it sold at the time. But safe to say, you guys are...
A decent album, yeah.
You're being very, very kind. You're up and running. You're fucking Crosby, Stills, and Nash. You're a thing. You're it. And then Altamont Erdogan goes, hey, you know what you guys need? Neil Young.
Only when we had to go out live.
What? Because
Steven
wanted to play keyboards
on the first record.
And when he played keyboards, you needed that other guitar.
And when he played bass, we'd need another. And when he played...
Well, why wouldn't you just find a studio? Well, look, you can't... There's no going, hey, because Neil Young's Neil Young and he brought so goddamn much. He's a brilliant... Right. He's a damn genius.
Uh-huh.
But you seem to be the lone... No, you were the lone holdout.
I was, because I didn't know Neil.
Yeah.
I'd never hung out with Neil for more than 2 minutes.
All right, but the guys that knew him thought he was a pain in the ass.
That's right.
So it's odd that the 2 guys that know him think he's a pain in the ass, give him the vote of confidence, and you're the lone holdout, and you must be thinking to yourself, hold on, you're selling me a guy that you're telling me is a pain in my fucking ass.
I know, but
let's get a studio guy.
We could have, but we need challenge too.
Let's get Jeff Beck. Who's in traffic? Let's get him out.
Steven wanted Jimmy to play. You want Stevie Winwood to come and play and join. Who knows?
And then Steven could have played guitar, and then Steve Winwood could have played keyboards.
Yeah, it would have worked out, but it didn't.
But it did work out. There's no regrets, obviously.
No,
it's Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. But I did notice the box set is Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
The first one, yes.
Well, the one I own, the big one from a couple of years ago. Where's Neil?
Neil's on it. He's all over it.
But why isn't he on the cover? Do you feel like I'm badgering you?
Yeah, but I don't want it because I'm a strong man, and here's the answer to that.
It's certainly not how I wish this to come across.
It's okay.
I'm fascinated.
I know, but I'm not taking any of this personally. Please.
Well, I would hope you wouldn't.
I talked to Neil. Neil, when I was making that very first box set in the early 90s. And I got permission from Neil to use anything I wanted. And so I arranged the album that way. Got a call 2 days later from Elliot, Neil's manager, saying, no, we've rethought it and you can only use 6 or 7. So then I had to reprogram every single disc of the 4 CD set. And it was a pain in the ass. quite frankly. And we made the decision that if Neil didn't want to, be truly a part of it, then it's just our box set, and occasionally we'll throw some Neil stuff in there because he played with us.
Yeah, fair enough.
And that's the truth.
I mean, Norman, I've said it earlier, and I certainly don't want you to feel like I'm badgering you, but it's a very fascinating dynamic.
It is.
And you write extensively about it.
Of course.
In Wild Tales.
What an interesting story. I mean, who the hell could write the life story of these 4 people? Insane.
I'll tell you what's not insane, Graham Nash. This is what I got. After reading Wild Tales, first of all, your photography, I got to take a time out. If you go to grahamnash.com, you should see Graham Nash's photography. It's fascinating. I've been a long-time collector of rock and roll photography, and for some reason, the Graham Nash collection has completely passed me by, but that's not the case anymore. You'll be hearing from me very shortly. The Jim Marshalls and the Gruins in my house will be have a lot of company soon.
I'll be happy to make you a print of your favorite image.
I'm not asking for anything for free whatsoever, but David Crosby, 1984, is...
Alone in the dressing room?
It is show business.
Yeah.
Everything about it is appealing.
That's right.
No, not really.
Not really.
You should see what we do before
the show. We're
still
sweating here.
We sit there fucking alone. Not we, meaning I'm a big shot like you guys, but it just really hits me. It's just David alone.
Yeah.
It's Jesus.
The other end of the business.
Yeah. People don't realize you're always in some fucking locker room.
That's right.
Or backstage at some college, and some 18-year-old goes, "Do you guys want Doritos or anything?"
That's right.
Like, no, I'd like to go on stage.
Perrier, perhaps?
Why are we waiting? Well, we got to run the video for the student activities.
And then there's an introduction by the granny that owns the place.
Yeah, and then the local radio DJ is going to throw free T-shirts into the crowd.
That's right. And then we have the food bank.
Yeah. And then we'll bring you guys out after the cooking segment. Maybe. So just sit tight here in this little tiny girls' volleyball locker room.
That's right. It still smells like that. Right?
Yeah, it's funky. But that's an astounding
And on the other end, it's live performances at the Royal Albert Hall.
But I'll tell you, the live performance that I like the most I haven't seen all your work, and I'm so excited that it's when you discover a band for the first time and you realize, I have 8 albums. That I get to all of a sudden listen to because I thought music was just dead in my brain. Now I have all these great Graham Nash photographs to enjoy. My favorite live performance, and I haven't seen all of them, is very personal, and it's you shooting Joni Mitchell, I think in your home, through the back of a kitchen chair. And she's not performing. She's listening to music.
Yes.
But she might as well be just in between verses singing herself. She's so incredibly present.
Well, she's in that space that musicians go to when they're creating.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that is, but I have the address.
This is, after reading Wild Tales, Graham Nash, and I really need you to know all my line of questioning comes from complete utter fascination because I adore the music of the 3 and of the 4.
I can feel that, yeah.
And it's the 4 things of nitroglycerin that Cros was that's what you call him in the book so much. So it's so fascinating to me. When I finished the book, Wild Tales, and you can all go get it right now. I put my name on it. It's fascinating. You might be, in the annals of show business, maybe the best friend anyone ever could have. I really came away from this book thinking, if I ever went through horrible, horrible things in my life, I hope there's a guy like Graham Nash riding shotgun with me.
It's because I realized that there was something basically brilliant and loving about David Crosby. It comes with a pile of shit. We all do. We all come with baggage. But basically, David would be there for me. And he has been in the past, and I'll be there for him. There's a deep love for the man. I don't agree with him all the time. He's been an enormous part of my life for the last 45 years. He's put me through incredible emotional changes. And he's in my life, and I love it.
He went through... His girl dies in a van accident, taking a cat to the vet. And you write in the book that you saw a piece of David die. Mm-hmm. And then you make that decision. I'm going to go out. Whatever bender David goes out on, I'm just going to match him shot for shot, toot for toot. Whatever he does, I'm his guy. And I don't know too many. Most people would be like, hang out with me. Don't go crazy down that road. It's only going to make it worse. Your thing is, hey, we could drive into the center of the sun. We could die, but we're going to die together.
That's right.
You made that commitment fearlessly.
I did.
And that doesn't really exist, Graham. Like you're
it does.
In you.
Well,
I would say
there's only me in here.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying. You're a different breed of cat, especially for that era.
Well,
you said earlier about the backstabbing and the arguments and all this shit.
It's the music, That's the most important thing.
David tells you, let's go down to Florida and get on my boat and clear our heads for a little while. Why don't you let my listeners know? You assumed, let's go to Florida. Couple days, we'll eat some lobster, make a little love with some...
Couple of days? No, I didn't even think that. I was thinking maybe a Sunday afternoon dinner. You smoke a big one and watch a beautiful sunset. And no.
You go on David's boat...
9 weeks later.
9 weeks on the Mayan.
Yes.
Okay.
Beautiful schooner that he had.
Okay, but every beautiful schooner, I think, hits a limit as far as how long it should be at sea. I mean,
I know,
Emperor Hirohito
if
said we should bring these aircraft carriers back. It's too much Pacific for us.
It is, but when you're going from Fort Lauderdale and trying to bring it round to San Francisco, there's only one way to go.
Through the Panama Canal.
Through the Panama Canal, that's right.
Held up at customs in Jamaica. A couple long-haired hippies pull up in a yacht. Mm-hmm. Jamaicans didn't think that was
obviously
too cool.
Drug runners, they thought.
Yeah. Which is odd because there was copious amounts of drugs and weapons on the ship. Somehow, Jamaican authorities, over the course of 7 days, didn't find any of it.
No.
The best, easiest hiding spot, maybe in the history of hiding spots.
That's right. In
Milk
plain
carton
sight.
in the fucking refrigerator.
Wherever.
You're damn geniuses. 9 weeks on a boat.
With Crosby.
Yeah. Because he needed to clear his head. At what point do you say to yourself, I need a life raft. I got to get out of here.
I never thought it.
That's what I'm talking about.
I never thought that.
That's what I'm saying. I think